Inheritance and variation. What is genetics? The science that deals with the transmission of biological properties from parent to offspring is termed as genetics. So, it is the science which deals with character transmission or traits from biological properties from parents to offsprings. We often heard this term that this son or daughter is similar to his or her parents respectively. So, how they are similar? What is the extent of the similarities? The science that deals with such things is termed as genetics, and it is derived from a Greek word genesis, means to grow into or to become. Children, when they grow, they become like their father or mother. So to grow into or to become something which was there in their generation is termed as genetics. It was first coined by Sir W. Watson. Now, what is heredity? The process of character transmission from generation to generation is termed as heredity. So how characters are transmitted from parents to offspring or from generation to generation, the process of this character transmission is termed as heredity. So we can say any living organism depends upon the complex interaction of both heredity and environment. One of the reasons for appearance of variation lies in sexual reproduction. When I will discuss reproduction topic, we will see that reproduction is basically of two types: asexual and sexual. So in asexual reproduction, which we see in bacteria, they form clones that are similar to each other and also to their parents. There are no such variation. But in sexual reproduction, variation does occur. So let's take an example of a person X. So his behavior depends upon the complex interaction of both heredity, that which he has obtained from his parents, and also the environment in which he or she lives in. So these two factors, heredity and environment, determines the individuality of an organism, and that happens, and the reason for this variation lies in sexual reproduction. These are all new to you. I will explain this in my later videos. For now only this is sufficient, and this is just an introduction to genetics. Reproduction, two types: asexual and sexual. Asexual reproduction, just to introduce you, there are no fusion of gametes takes place. Single parent is sufficient to produce its offspring, but in sexual reproduction, gamete fusion takes place and two partners are required. So clones are seen in asexual reproduction. Let's take an example with a pizza. So this is a pizza, consider it as a pizza. So you divide the pizza in equal halves. So now you take each half and you will find that all the halves or all the individual pizzas that is obtained from this big parental pizza are similar. to each other in terms of shape, size, and constituencies. So these are termed as clones. So genetically uniform population obtained from a single organism. So this pizza, we consider it as an bacteria. Okay, so this bacteria, when it divides equally, uniformly, and this is known as clones. So this genetically uniform population obtained from a single organism by asexual method. You see, in this bacteria or pizza, there are no sexual partners required. So this is asexual reproduction, and this genetically uniform population is termed as clone, and they show no to little variation. Now, how variation is involved in this method of asexual reproduction? Let's take, suppose this is a pizza, and here you have, in this side you have sufficiently large amount of olives, and here less olives compared to this one. Here no or very little. So this variation, so when you divide, this pizza will definitely get much olives or say cheese. So little variation, indistinct variation, very little. So this is clone. Uniform population obtained from a single organism. Now, what is gametes? Individuals which are carbon copies of one another are and or to the parents are called gametes. So these individuals are carbon copies. They are exactly similar to each other and also to their parents, and these are termed as gametes. Now, what are the reasons of variations? There are several reasons for variation. One such reason for variation is environmental factors. For these two, let's consider this as individual and this as individual obtained from this parent. So they have been taken to different environments. So obviously they will show variation. Slight variation they will show. Not so extreme, slight variation they show. So environment plays an important role in variation. Suppose this organism is grown after its birth, it's grown in a less nutrient environment, and this organism or individual is grown in a high nutrient environment. So this organism will definitely grow in its shape, size, and compared to this one. So environment does plays an important role in variation. Variations are only environmental. So variations is the effect of environment. In bacteria, reproduction can be asexual, sexual, like conjugation, transformation, and transaction. So in bacteria, I have already mentioned that reproduction in bacteria is asexual because there are no sexual partners required. A single parent divides itself to produce gametes or a population of clones. But bacteria also show sexual reproduction like conjugation, transformation, and transduction in special cases. Now, what are conjugation, transformation, and transduction? These are new to you. I will explain this in my next videos. Certain hereditary variation in the progeny are produced by genetical events like recombination and crossing over. So, hereditary variation in the progeny are obtained by genetical events like recombination and crossing over. Now, what is recombination, crossing over? These are again a new term to you. I'll explain this in my next videos. Up to this, because this is just the introduction, so remembering these terms itself is sufficient. Now variation. What is variation? Variation is the noticeable differences shown by the individuals of a species and also by the offsprings of the same parents are referred to as variations. Classification of variation: nature of the cell it affects and the degree of differences produced. So variation is the noticeable differences shown by the individuals of a species. Suppose this is a colony of the same species. We find that some species are tall, some individuals of the same species, let's say human species, some are tall, some are dwarf, some have white hair, some have black, some have grey hairs. So these differences, and these are noticeable differences shown by the individuals of the same species and also by the offsprings of the same parents. For a single parent, their offsprings the offsprings are slightly different among each other. So this difference, this noticeable difference, is termed as variation. And what are the classification of variation? It depends upon the nature of the cells it affects and the degree of differences produced. Okay. Now the nature of the cells it affects, how it happens, like let's say muscular cells. This child has grown much of its muscle cells, so he is muscular compared to this one because he has not worked out with his muscles. So variation is there, and it is the nature of the cells it affects. Degree of differences produced. So as per the nature of the cells it affects, variations can be somatic and germinal or blastogenic. Somatic means also called acquired variation, not inherited from parents and affect the somatic cells only, acquired by an organism during its lifetime. As I mentioned, this is the parent and these are the children of this parent. Now you see, somatic variation is like this child has worked out with his muscles, he has gone for gyms, so he has developed his muscular cells, and it is acquired, that is he has acquired from the environment, not from the parent. So it helps. So variation is seen in between these two childs of the same parent, and it is, as I said, not inherited from parents and affect the somatic cells only, that is body cells, acquired by the organism during its lifetime. Now germinal or blastogenic. Germ cells are involved for this variation and are inheritable. So germ cells like sperms and ovums, so these are involved for this variation and are inheritable. So it is germinal or blastogenic. Example: blood group, hemophilia, color blindness, baldness, eye color. So these characters are obtained from the parents. So let's say the father is a color blind, it can happen that one of his children can be a color blind or a hemophilic patient. So these things are germinal or blastogenic, that is it is obtained from the parents and germ cells are completely involved for this variation. So this is all about the nature of the cells it affects. Variation type 1. Nature of the cells it affects. Okay. Possible causes of somatic variations: nutrition. One of the child has taken so much of nutrition, so he is healthy compared to the other children's. Habitat, the place or the environment in which he lives in. A better habitat brings better outcomes and does somatic variation, and this is the cause for somatic variation. Better conditions, water, use and disuse of organs. A sports person is always, an athletic person is always, healthy compared to a non-athletic person. So somatic variation is involved. Conscious efforts. Now what is Lamarck's conscious effort? In this theory of evolution, acquired variations are inheritable. That is, Lamarck said that all the acquired variation, it is said acquired means obtained from the environment, and these acquired variations are inheritable, that is not heritable, that is it is not transmitted from parents, rather it is acquired. Okay. Now the possible reasons for germinal variation. The possible reasons for germinal variations are crossing over. I said this is involved germ cells, that is sperm and ovum, and together they fuse to form gametes. Zygote. These are gametes or germ cells. So crossing over of these germ cells results in germinal variation. Structural modifications of chromosomes, chemical nature of genes, polyploidy and radiation. These are all very new to you. I will explain this in my next videos, but before that, please remember that possible reasons for germinal variations are crossing over, structural modifications of chromosomes, chemical nature of genes, and polyploidy or radiations. As per the degree of differences, continuous is small and indistinct variation when compared to normal, also called fluctuating variations, very unstable and non-inheritable. For example, a person who is grown in a nutrient environment, that is a comfortable environment, will show slight variation to the other child compared to the other child, and this variation is very unstable, no? Because if you take this good condition out of this healthy person, the fluctuations are this is a fluctuating variation. Again, this healthy person will grow, will become weak. So these are fluctuating variations, very unstable and non-inheritable. Now it is further classified into two types, substantive and meristic. Now what is substantive in terms of continuous difference, and meristic in terms of continuous differences I will explain. Before that, let's talk about discontinuous degree of difference. Represent difference of the progeny from parents. They are referred as mutations or saltations, stable and inheritable. So the progeny, they differ and show difference from the parents. They are referred as mutation or saltations. For example, one of the child of a parent is exposed to UV environment continuously, so he will develop tumor in his body. So this is mutation, and it is stable and inheritable, that is not obtained from parents, and the tumor will remain in his body unless and until some external causes are there to remove this tumor. So this is discontinuous in nature, that is it is inheritable and stable, and the progeny differs from parents. It is again classified in two types, substantive and meristic, but there are differences in types of continuous and discontinuous in terms of substantive and meristic. I will explain this. Now let's talk about substantive variation in terms of continuous degree of difference. Substantive means bring change in size, weight, color, affect the morphology, that is appearance of the living beings. It is the morphological change that is appearance, change in the appearance. A person who is grown in a well conditioned environment is morphologically different to the other who is grown in less comfortable environment. Meristic means bring change in certain parts of an organism. Example, change in arms in starfish, change in the number of sepals or petals. Some starfish, they change the number of arms, generally it is 5, but some have 4 or 6. So this change in the structure or morphology is termed as meristic continuous degree of difference. Now for discontinuous variation, substantive discontinuous degree of difference indicates that mutations bring variations in size, weight, shape, color, and as I said, that discontinuous is basically mutation, that is inheritable, that is developed, obtained from the parents to the progeny. So mutations, there is a mutation in the chromosomes of the father. So this mutation in the father will bring some permanent change or in the offsprings or the children, like hairless variety of dogs and cats, baldness. We find baldness in some children of the parent because father was a bald person. Okay, color of the hair. So this is substantive discontinuous degree of difference. And now meristic discontinuous degree of difference indicates that change in the number in certain parts in living beings. That is, for example, brachydactyl means short fingers. Let's say the mother has short fingers, so it will come to their next generation, and some children, they develop short fingers or dwarf. Some parents are tall, so their children are tall. Syndactyl, that is fused fingers. Some fingers are joined. So these are mutations that has happened in their parents and now transmitted to the children. So this is meristic discontinuous degree of difference. Now I will talk about the significance of variations. What are the importance of variation? Distinct individuality. Otherwise everybody will look same, which is not appreciable. So distinct individuality will be obtained from variations. Advanced species in the struggle of existence. We want advanced persons, advanced species to exist in this world, continuously changing world. Variation forms the basis of heredity. So if there are no variations, there is no basis of heredity. Useful variants of plants and obtains are produced. We can produce desirable plants and plant species, raw material for evolution, adaptations to new environment. Variation helps to adapt new environment. Now, the differences between clone and offsprings. Clone is the product of asexual reproduction, as I have mentioned, that when a single parent divides into many individuals, this population of individuals are termed as clones. So only single parent is involved, so this is a product of asexual reproduction, whereas offsprings are the product of sexual reproduction, that is two parents are involved to produce children, and this is termed as offspring. Clone is monoparental, that is single parent is required. Offspring is obtained by meiosis of the gametes. Offsprings are biparental, that is two parents are involved. In clone mitosis occurs, and in offspring meiosis occurs. Now what is mitosis and meiosis, I will explain. Clones resemble two parents. Offspring differs from parents because some traits obtained from father, some obtained from mother. No gene recombination occurs in clone because of a single parent, and offsprings exhibit genetic variation. Now the difference between continuous variation and discontinuous variation. Continuous variation are small indistinct differences from the average. Discontinuous variation are large. I think this I have mentioned in my earlier slides. Already present in population, also called mutations, also known as fluctuations, and it is stable and inheritable. Unstable and non-inheritable, curve is not stable and inheritable, smooth curve, and curve is not produced. So these are the differences between continuous and variation and discontinuous variation. Every points I have explained in my early slides. You just go ahead and you will find. Why smooth curve and curve here is not produced in discontinuous variation? Continuous variation produces smooth curve. That is, it depends upon the changes in the environment, fluctuations, not so stable. But curve is not produced because it is stable, and so curve is not produced in discontinuous variation. This is the way to explain the continuous variation. You just think these 2 points, this is sufficient. This is stable, this is unstable, fluctuating. Okay.